Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Monday. And of course to Aquarius Rising Africa. With me, Chantelle, your hostess with the mostest awesome viewers and guests. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining Brice. How are you?
I'm so good. And thank you guys for all the emails and the concerns with the hurricane. The hurricane missed Atlanta. Um, Prayers are to all the cities that got hit. I know Asheville's underwater right now. Gatlinburg, Tennessee is underwater right now. And I know some people lost their towns in South Georgia. So I hope that everybody who didn't miss the hurricane, who got stuck in the eye of the hurricane, is okay. But we are okay in Atlanta. We're used to getting hurricanes, but it doesn't mean they're not devastating to those that get hit by them. So for those that are being displaced by the hurricane, I hope that you guys are all okay. But yeah, we're good. We're absolutely good.
Wow, that's excellent. I know there's been crazy weather. Guys, we have had the most insane weather here. I mean, on the 21st of September, which is our summer, basically, it's the end of our spring going nicely into summer, half a meter of snow. Half a meter of snow. We don't even get snow here.
Yeah.
We get snow on the mountains, right?
Yeah.
We have some ski resort up somewhere that has fake snow. And I think, yeah, they can have snow up there. They can have snow on the very, very high
Do
mountains.
that the South too.
I mean, seriously. And then when we thought summer was coming, I've had the two most horrific days of wind and rain. This morning, my internet was in and out, and I thought my whole world was blowing away here this morning. But anyway, I'm very happy to be here, still standing, and definitely I think we are dealing with the weather witches at the moment all over. So yeah,
I'm
yeah,
glad
yeah.
I just found out that South Africa has fake snow resorts. We have a couple of those down here in the South as well because we don't get snow
Yeah.
either. There's one place in Alabama when I was a kid. They had like two little tracks you can run. They have a machine that cranks the snow, and if you can't stop yourself, the gravel will soon stop you. And nobody has snow gear on because it's actually not even that cold. So people are like in their blue jeans. So
No, actually, I think yeah, I actually must actually go and investigate it more.
it's quite fun.
It's like up in Lesotho somewhere in the mountains in Lesotho, as far as I remember correctly. But I don't think all of it is fake snow. I think they have enough there. That's why they built it there. And it looks quite, from what I've seen in the past, it looks quite zazzy. So
The place in Alabama that I'm thinking of is it literally has this machine that pushes out snow in this one little strip of land, and it has to.
It's hilarious. But anyway, for those of you, I mean, we of course didn't go, I didn't grow up in a snowing country. So the first time I went to Europe was at the end of 1989, and I was going skiing in Austria. So what they have here is like these places where you can go and learn to ski, but it's like carpets, okay? And it's like this machine. Yes, it's on carpets. You put skis on, and these machines like take you. It's actually quite amazing. It's quite difficult. Apparently, it's much more difficult than on the snow. So when I got on the snow, I could actually ski. Like I wouldn't say well the first time I went to a few days of ski school, but yeah, there with all the little Austrian little ski instructors looking very buff. They're like South Africa's surfer boys.
South Africa just pummeling down the
Exactly.
I did ski
That was hilarious. I loved it. I
in
loved
the
it. Oh gosh,
spring.
what a memory. I've just relived this. Sorry, Brice.
No,
Yeah.
so in the spring we used to go to Colorado to ski. We would fly out there and we would do ski school. And I took this private ski lesson. My mother was with me with this woman. I was probably like 12, and we get to the top of this course, and she's going to take me down this course. And you went down and you made a quick turn. And my mother was like, I don't think she's ready for that. But I mean, we're Aquarius. I think Aquarians are kind of daredevils anyway. I was like, it's fine. So I get my skis on. I go straight down the mountain. And instead of turning, I flipped over the fence and landed in a big pile of snow, and my skis were up in the air. My mother was panicking, and she said all you could hear from the snow was this little girl just laughing my ass off. And then it took two of them to get me out of the pile of snow. But no, it's I think we're Aquarians, we're just daredevils anyway. We'll just go, we'll just do it, you know.
Well,
so
while we're on the topic, and I know we're not talking about skiing here, but I have to tell you this as well. So the first day I'm on the Alps, right? My fiance was an Austrian, and he was a skier, very, very good skier. And he was like 6'6". So I've got my snow white ski suit on. I mean, you don't understand how sassy I looked, okay? Thank you, Janice. You got the picture, right? I've even got photographs to prove it still to this day. Anyway, so, but the first time, this was before I actually went to ski school. So he says, no, man, stand on the back of my skis. He says, I'll ski down with you. So, of course, these guys do this all the time. So here's me like farm girl from the Karoo, right? The ass end of Africa. Never in her life even seen snow. I kid you not, except once when I was 2. Okay, it snowed like an inch on our lawn. And there I go. Now, you got to know, you go down, anyone who knows, so we're going down this road, like fast, okay? I'm hanging on to him. So as he goes down the road, he, of course, has to start snow plowing, right, to slow down.
Yes.
So what do you think happens to my legs? I was like ass about face off there. My snow white sassy ski suit was like split. he rolled down the side because I made him fall, and all I saw was like laying there, and him coming up, and just these like Ray-Ban sunglasses, saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?"
I just see your legs just.
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell, man? That was actually hilarious. It was a really good fun experience.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh
anyway,
gosh.
great.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've relived our skiing stories, farm girl from the Karoo, first time in the Austrian Alps.
I mean, same thing with being from Georgia. I mean, when I was a little kid, they had us do a sense memory test, and they asked us, like, when you think of skiing, write down what you think of. And everyone in my class wrote water skiing, water. And then if you ask kids from the north, they'll say snow, because it's the same in Georgia. We don't get snow. Like, we don't do winter down here. That's not a thing down here. We just don't do it. We say no, thank you. But we get our hurricanes and we get our heat. But yeah, it's when you're not from, I mean, in Telluride, Colorado, my sister lived out there for a while. For their PE, for the school system, so for their physical education, their gym class, they would do every other day skiing with every other day yoga. So you have these little kids like skiing from the time they can like walk. You know, so it's crazy what we adapt to. It makes sense that your fiance would be like, it's cool, I got this, just jump on my back. Meanwhile, you're like, what the fuck is happening?
I mean, yeah. And these guys, they all used to ski for Austria.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts. They just come down the mountain skiing backwards. They're like,
yeah.
I'm like, cool, nice.
Yeah. So
I felt safe with them, though. I must say, I felt very safe.
Splitting your pants.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Well, speaking about skiing in the Austrian Alps, to Francis Borgia. I mean,
listen,
that's a horrible timeline jump. But anyway, we'll make it.
Silver linings. We affected by the biolab explosion, possibly. I just sent to Shanti the information. So for you guys that don't know, 45 minutes outside of Atlanta is a town called Conyers, Georgia, and they had a biolab explode yesterday. The footage is crazy. I posted it on my TikTok. Conyers has evacuated. My boyfriend thinks you can smell it outside. They might evacuate Atlanta. We don't know. We're just waiting. So for people in Conyers, Georgia, I hope you're safe. It's crazy. If you look at the footage, I sent you some of it. It's crazy. So anyway, but yeah, to Francis Borgia, I was telling you before we started filming, So I'm an Aquarius is my sun sign. I'm a Leo rising, but my moon is Scorpio. And I always thought that meant I was very emotional, which I am. But I found out recently that Scorpio moons, we're very we're very stalkerish. And
well, yes, of course you are. Scorpios are so skanky when it comes to that.
I don't stalk. Like, listen, like if I break up with somebody, or if they're, I never stalk. Like, I never look at their social media. I never like. I just don't want anything to do with somebody if they're out of my life. However, I was telling Shanti, I will stalk the shit out of these dead people. And I have done that with Francis Borgia. That's why we've done so many episodes on the Schmezuits and the necromancy and sainthood, because I had to understand all.
You're a ghost stalker. That's what you are. You're a ghost stalker.
Ghost stalker. I'm going to stalk the shit out of these dead people, because we are going to call them out on their shit. Because these dead people need the truth.
I love it. Okay, but we've got to give you a name. Okay, I'd love to hear in the comments what we should call Brice. She's a stalker, but like you know, like the others are ghostbusters. She's a ghost stalker, but we need a cooler name than ghost. We've got to like not demon or anything nasty like that. We don't want to like, we don't want nasty names.
Nancy Boo.
Yeah, we want a cool, cute name for Brice who stalks the dead.
I guess you know, it's like, it just pisses me the F off, because I'm like, these people were such scumbags, and you've got the freaking Catholic Church like praising them and trying to convince you that they were these heroic people, and I'm like, you and your propaganda can go to hell, because it's very obvious that this was not what was happening with these people.
You should call yourself the Hades stalker, because you know, with a Scorpio moon, you got to know, like, that's 8th house Hades stuff, right? So you're digging into Hades, which is really like ISL. So you should call yourself the Hades stalker.
I'm a private investigator into the devil's minions, like just like.
Yeah. Oh wow!
So, and that's why, you guys, we've done so many episodes on the Schmezuits again, necromancy, sainthood, because I needed to understand all of these different facets to fully understand what was happening with this dipshit Francis Borgia. Now, we're going to talk about this at the end, like how venerated Francis Borgia is. But there is there's a podcast by a guy named Friar, I'll make sure I get his name right, Friar Isaac Longworth. And I hate to call this guy out. And this guy sounds like, you guys, you see how much notes I have? I'm going to be flipping back and forth. This guy is either like extremely delusional, this friar. I don't know. Do you call him friars? Do you call him, I don't know. I'm not a Catholic, so I don't know what the proper thing to call him is. This guy is either extremely delusional when it comes to Francis Borgia, or he is absolutely just regurgitating the propaganda that's been put forth by the Catholic Church, which are his employers, because I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that some of the propaganda they say about Francis Borgia and why it's incorrect. Because we got to understand, out of all the Borgias, he's, in my opinion, the worst. Like, I think the Borgia 4 were pretty bad, but at least they would have been a good time to party with. Like, let's be honest, they were probably really fun to go to parties with. But this dude is like evil to his core, right? So let's talk about Francis Borgia. So Francis Borgia was born on the 28th of October, 1510. And he died on the 30th of September, 1572. Now, he was, again, the third superior general, which is the Black Pope. We know all about the Black Pope, right? So he was the third superior. He was the third one. Number 3. We know 3 is significant with them, right? All right. He was also the great-grandson of Pope Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, and King Ferdinand II of Aragon. So he had royalty basically on both sides of his family. And we're going to talk more in an upcoming episode. I'm still working on it, about the Spanish Inquisition, because that does need to be spoken about as well, because this dude was born like right in the heat of the Spanish Inquisition. And I am sorry if you are a Christian, and that should be mortifying to you, what they did to people. But we're going to get into how the Roman Empire became the Catholic Church, and how in the Roman Empire, their religions, it was very, you worshipped the politics, and that's why the Catholic Church wants to be the New World Order religion because it all makes sense when you step back and look at it as a whole. But okay, so let's talk about Francis. So again, his father was Juan Borgia, who was the son of Juan Borgia. So Juan Borgia, the dude from the Borgia Four who was murdered and his body went missing, that guy we talked about, he was Francis Borgia's grandfather. Now, interestingly enough, he would have been like, if his grandfather had been alive when Francis Borgia was born, he would have been like 34 years old. So they had babies, so he would have been a young grandfather. But nonetheless, he died before Francis Borgia was born. Now, his mother was a woman named Juana. Juana was the daughter of Alfonso de Aragon, who was the illegitimate son of King Ferdinand II of Aragon. So who is King Ferdinand? That's Ferdinand and Isabel. That pair, those people. So yeah, big bloodline families here. Big, he combined in him. All right. Not only that, but he grew up in the court of Charles V, who was the Holy Roman Emperor. He was Charles I of Spain, which was his great uncle. So we've got some Habsburg there as well. All right. So now I got to shoot forward a little bit, guys, here. All right. So Francis Borgia was born kind of in the lap of luxury, obviously because of his, the Illuminati. Yeah, thanks, Hema. Yes. Now, what the church will tell you, and this is what Friar Isaac Longworth said in his podcast, and it made me so mad. First of all, she talks about how Francis Borgia, who gets sainted, which we'll talk about, was the product. Yes, he was the great grandson of Pope Alexander VI. And so Friar Isaac Longworth in this podcast starts to kind of say, now you might be thinking, oh, how can he be the great grandson of a pope? Because popes don't have children, right? And he starts talking about how the Borgias were a little bit controversial. What he neglects to tell people is that what we talked about when we talked about the House of Borgia is that at this time period, it was common for popes to have children. So we already see where the Catholic Church is trying to change history. They're trying to rewrite the narrative here. And actually what Friar Isaac Longworth neglects to tell you is that Rodrigo Borgia, Pope Alexander VI, literally had the least amount of children out of any of the popes. And him having children as a pope was the least of his sins. In my opinion, every child born is supposed to be here, right? The fact that so that pissed me off a little bit. He made it sound like Pope Alexander VI was just kind of a wild guy, kind of a little scallion, and he just had all these kids. Well, no, that was just how it was back then. That's what it was like back then. It was very advantageous for a pope or a cardinal to have children because it gave them political sway, making deals with all these other empires and kingdoms, which again, we talked about that in the House of Borgia episodes. If you guys missed that, I'll go back and watch that because it might be shocking to us now because we think of them as being celibate, but that's not how it was back then. And history, what's that quote? History is like a foreign country. They do things differently there. So back when the Borgias were living, it was very common for there to be children of the Pope. These children were more valuable than prince and princesses, right? So, and I wouldn't be shocked if some of the popes in our modern time had, absolutely, I would definitely agree with that, Janice. I mean, I don't know 100% for sure, but I would absolutely agree with that. And we asked Jessica, our friend who's a remote viewer, to remote view this.
Interesting, Monique. I'll just call you Monique. Intuitively Moniqueness.
That's interesting. Well, Pope Francis now, the Pope we have now, apparently allegedly claims to be a descendant of the Borgias. So, and didn't we ask Jessica in our remote viewing, and she got that they're still high up in this group.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
How can they not be? They just
exactly.
We know enough to know that the bloodlines are hidden now. They've hidden those bloodlines. It's like the Habsburg. Not the Habsburg. Who's the royal bloodline? That German bloodline that the royals actually are.
Mountbatten.
That's right. So it's like they hide behind the bloodlines. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
That are interbred and hiding in between each other.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's all very planned, you guys. And so if you listen to the propaganda of the church when they talk about, because they talk about Francis Borgia because they did saint him. So they have to tell his background, right? And so the whole thing with Isaac Longworth and this propaganda is that St. Francis Borgia, he was the Borgia that brought his family back in alignment with God. Bullshit. Or I could say witch God. Witch God.
Right.
You know? He goes on to tell you, so once his grandfather, Juan Borgia, the son of Pope Alexander that was murdered, was, you know, that unsolved mystery that we talked about, his wife went and lived in a nunnery. So Francis Borgia's grandmother became a nun along with his aunt. Now, again, Friar Isaac Longworth will say, you know, they just wanted to bring the family back to God, so they went and became a nun. That is also bullshit. And we've talked about this this before with other deep dives. Back in this time and for a lot of history, for women who were hierarchy or born into like royalty or aristocracy, when their husbands would die or something would happen to their husbands, a lot of times these women would go live in nunneries because this was like a retirement system where they were protected. So this was not uncommon. This was very common for women. I would not expect her not to go live in a nunnery because it was kind of like a safe place for them to live. So for Friar Isaac Longworth to try to manipulate that and to say that they were becoming super religious and that's why they went and became a nun is literally trying to rewrite history, because historically speaking, that's what they all did. That's what all the aristocratic women did when their husbands died. They went to live in a nunnery, like a retirement home. Right? Because women were not autonomous beings, right? We talked about that with Lucrezia. Even these women who were born in high-ranking, powerful, rich family, the women in these houses were not, again, like the peasant women were not autonomous beings. And so they were used as pawns. They had no right to exist without the partnership of a man or the jurisdiction of a father or a brother. And so a lot of these women were sent to nunneries. You know, and so it had nothing. It had, excuse my language, but it had fuck all to do with the Borgias trying to be good people. It was literally just what they did culturally. So Isaac Longworth, you sound like a really nice guy in your podcast, but I'm going to call you out where this is not correct.
I'm so with you on that, because let's look at all these deletes, right, that are controlling the world. What's the favorite thing they call them? A philanthropist.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they have some children's charity or some very worthy cause they all look after. Look at the Freemasons, all the good work they do on the surface as well. You know, the Lions Club, stuff like that. You know, so this has been going on since forever. So we have to know the kinder, and then again, I'm going to draw your attention to Jessie Zabota, whose proctor was the Queen Mother of Darkness. Now, if you see this lady, she is a shrimped up version of my mom. Little old lady with gray hair. Okay, cool. She wasn't always that. But that lady was once the most powerful, had once held the most powerful position on the planet.
Yeah.
And the clever lives they live as if they don't have money. They live as if they don't, they live very frugally, a lot of them, right? So all in line with this thing that to be good, we've got to be poor.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all of that sort of stuff. So we have to really realize that this has been going on forever. We cannot not look behind the masks that they're putting up. That, I think, is why I'm saying this, because that, I think, is the most important thing if we're relating the scandals of our historious, I mean, as in glorious ancestors, right?
Yeah.
to the way they're still playing out today. Guys,
100%.
The dark forces are not creative. They don't change tactics.
No, they do. Yeah, they do
it's
the same
tactic in a different wrapping paper. but it's all the same. It smells the same. It stinks.
Same shit, different timeline.
Yeah,
literally.
Exactly.
And I like Janice, you said that your mother sent your older brother. She said, my mom had my older brother in a nunnery in 1969. So yeah, sometimes people were just sent there. You know, that wasn't their they didn't not voluntarily go themselves, you know? And so I actually wrote in my notes, and this is talking about Friar Isaac Longworth, who I wrote is extremely delusional. And I said, either he has no critical thinking skills, is uneducated, or is an asset to the Satanist. And I want to believe that listening to this guy's podcast, he does sound like a really nice guy. So I want to believe that he's just ignorant or maybe brainwashed himself to the propaganda. But if you listen to this podcast, it's so delusional, and he literally rewrites history. And we're going to talk about other instances. And if you understand, I think when you're trying to understand a historical person, you have to look at all assets of their lives. You have to look at their family. You have to look at the time period they lived in. You have to look at the culture they come from. And actions always speak louder than words. You know, no, of course, we'll never know for sure, 100% for sure, what Francis Borgia was like as a person, because he died a long time ago. We didn't live with him. However, we can make, I think, a pretty educated guess by what he decided to do with his life and what was happening around his life. So to say that his grandmother checked herself into a nunnery to try to bring her family back in alignment with God, when that's what they just did anyway in that time, is completely preposterous and absurd to say that. You know, this was just a normal thing that happened to women whose husbands died. They just got sent to nunneries. He says, and I wrote in my notes here, Longworth claims that his grandmother and aunt inspired his piety. And I said, I'm sure they inspired him, but it turned him into the satanic warlock that he became. Because I believe in my heart of hearts that from the evidence I see, that Saint Francis Borgia was a warlock for the dark side. Yeah. That's what I believe. So at 10 years old, Francis Borgia's mother dies. His father remarried, and there was 10 more children. He already had like 2 brothers and 4 sisters, which again, big families at this time were also very common, because they needed more hands. They needed more people. They needed a bigger army for the cabal, or the peasants needed more people to work. It was just more common to have bigger families at this time, right? You know, now it's kind of funny because, again, Isaac Longworth goes into this whole thing about how destabilizing that was for Francis to have his mother die at 10. And I'm sure that there was a lot of trauma that happened to a 10-year-old losing his mother. But again, a different time period. So first of all, Francis Borgia, how he would have been born at this time period, his mother and father had fuck all to do with his upbringing. These were very rich people. They were handed off to servants to be raised. The rich people, the kings, the queens, they did not intervene that much with their children's upbringing, right? Yeah. So there was no interpersonal relationship with parents like there is now. And that's one thing I actually liked. I think I said this when we talked about the Borgia Four, which would have been Francis's grandfather and his great aunt and great uncle, Cesare, Juan, Lucrezia, and Joffrey, is that these 4 kids from my research seem to have a sibling relationship like we have with our siblings now, which was interesting because back in that time period, you would have a relationship with your siblings, especially if you grew up in the nursery with them, but it was very different than it is now. Remember, their children would marry, cousins would marry each other sometimes. Like, this was a very different time period. And so the fact that more siblings were born after his father remarried I don't think it affected Francis in a traumatic way that it would affect a child today. And that is not fair. It is not fair for us to put our cultural lenses and our personalities in 2024 on a historical person, just like we can't put their cultural experiences and perspectives on us. It's not fair because it's different. It's very, very, it's very different, right? And so we have to kind of look at that way as well, that this was a very different time. Thank you, my Southern Lifestyle and friends. I mean, I take it you're from the South too, and I will say I don't think it takes a Scorpio moon. Us Southern women, like we like to snoop. We'll go. We'll pray for you. That praying for you means we're going to gossip about you, right? So yeah, it's. I don't think that this. I mean, I'm sure it affected him a little bit, but I don't think it would have affected him as a 10-year-old like it would have affected our generation or our timeline of kids, because the relationship was just different. It was just a different relationship with our parents versus what was happening in his time period. Now, when he was 12 years old, a rebellion broke out, so he had to go live with his uncle, which was King Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor. Now, this rebellion is very interesting. And again, we're gonna eventually be talking about the Spanish Inquisition and what was going on at this time, because war and death were yeah, exactly. That's something we should actually talk about, the Menendez brothers, at some point.
I kid you not. I just watched the series on Netflix this weekend, and that's why I put it up. And that's one of the things I want to do, because exactly what you were saying. And thank you, Moniqueness, because that was actually what I wanted to say, that they were raised with this mentality. But there again, there's such a big question mark around that, but it's very, very interesting.
But
when you actually, but you know what's crazy? When you hear about, I don't know if you guys have watched that Netflix series, but he explains to, I think it was his therapist, Jose Menendez, he explains how men like that bond through pain. So he says they aren't graping each other, okay? But what was the word he used? They are like charging each other, was that type of thing. Then, of course, there's a lot of torture and pain that happens along with that, hence the objects and stuff that are used. And that is to toughen them. And the men bond in pain. So they form a much stronger unit because of the pain bond and the trauma bond that they've created through that. I found that fascinating psychology. I did.
You can kind of understand it, like what they're trying to do. But yeah, I would love to eventually talk about, because they're up for an appeal, I believe, this fall, and they might be released. And I know people are really torn about that, like what to do, and their family has stood behind them. The brothers, their aunts and uncles and cousins have supported them this whole time. And of course, more people have come out. But yeah, very similar. So if you think about like the Menendez brothers, and that same behavior was happening, I believe, in these families for many years. Was Francis Borgia abused by his family? Probably. We don't have evidence to back that, but especially what ended up happening, the path that he took, I think he probably was. And the fact that he was around the Inquisition was effing brutal. I mean, the Inquisition was brought on by his great-grandfather from his mama's side, Ferdinand. It was brutal what they were doing in this Inquisition. So he was used to seeing, even a child, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more deeper in the story, he was used to seeing death everywhere. Everybody was at this point. At this point, I mean, it was any given Tuesday, someone was going to be burned at the stake. Any given Wednesday, someone will get their head chopped off. People are dying of diseases. We don't have the process to hold, to keep bodies from decomposing so quickly. So we're gonna, that definitely, I think, plays into a lot of Francis Borgia's psyche as well, because you would somewhat become immune to that, right? Like over time, he probably became very, I think, like, I mean, I don't want to say immune, but I think your soul kind of like shatters a little bit and you kind of disassociate more. And I think the more you can disassociate, the easier it is for you to do psychotic stuff, because you're not in your soul. Yeah. Especially if you're having to survive. And I'm not making an excuse for Francis Borgia. As a child, yes, absolutely, I will protect any little child. But as an adult, that's when you have to take accountability for your actions. So this rebellion that broke out, there were also like the Moors. So there was a lot of Islamic people, Jewish people. We talked about that with his grandfather, these battles of Granada and all these different issues going on. But a rebellion was broken out, and so he got moved to the Mac Daddy palace of his great uncle, Charles V, who definitely had a Habsburg chin, you guys. This is where he became extremely powerful and extremely wealthy over time. He was granted more titles while he was there. We can definitely say that this is nepotism to an extreme. And honestly, guys, nepotism in itself, I don't really personally have a problem with nepotism. Like if you work hard and you build a business and you want to pass that business to your children, absolutely. But we know that the controllers of the world, the Illuminati, they love nepotism as well. And they definitely give their children power over time. And at this point, wealth was definitely different than wealth looks now. So we are on the petrodollar now. Back then, everything was backed by gold and land. So the more land you had back then, the wealthier you were. And so the more titles also that Francis Borgia was granted, the wealthier he became. So we have to understand that as well. That wealth looked, it didn't like pulling out your Black American Express card. It looked very different back in that time period. And back in that time period, it was a lot easier to get by depending on your last name because it depended on your family's land, again, their titles. And so that you kind of carry that wealth in a different way than we carry wealth today. I think that makes sense. Anyway, so he did marry a woman named Leonor de Castro Melo y Menes. And excuse me, I don't speak Spanish or Portuguese. She was a Portuguese noblewoman. He also started working for the Empress, which was a woman named Isabel of Portugal. So his wife was from Portugal. The Empress, who was his great aunt, she was also Portuguese. Now, it sounded like that what he did for his aunt, it sounded like what they were describing his job. It was more like he was kind of her main secretary, or I could even say maybe he was her handler. I don't know, but he definitely managed her. He managed her, okay? And it's interesting that she was Portuguese and that he ended up marrying a noblewoman from Portugal. They had 8 children themselves, so Francis was the father of 8 children. Now, in 1539, Isabel of Portugal unexpectedly died, okay? And so because Francis was like her main manager or whatever, he was responsible for getting her body from the court, from his great uncle's court to Granada, where she was going to be buried. Now, this was like a 2-week journey on carts and horses, as they did back then. Now, what the Catholic Church will tell you, and this just pisses me off because it's, again, propaganda, was that Francis Borgia, seeing Isabel of Portugal, someone that he loved so much and worked for and knew, seeing her die, and then seeing her decomposing body as they brought her to be buried, made him have a come to Jesus moment and become more pious, and because he realized his time on earth was temporal. Well, again, I call bullshit. That's bullshit. Because people were being burned at the stake every Tuesday. Like, what the hell are you talking about? This was during the Spanish Inquisition. Maybe for somebody in our generation, were to see somebody we love decompose, that might affect us greatly. But back then, there were people decomposing everywhere out on the street, right? So this didn't affect him. This did not affect him at all. This was just a job he did. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, let's historically get this accurate. There were dead people everywhere. His family was responsible for most of them, right? So anyway, wanted to call that out. So in 1543, not 1943, 1543, his own father dies. So that makes Francis now becomes the 4th Duke of Granada, because remember his grandfather Juan was the 2nd Duke of Granada after his half-brother Pier Luigi died. Then his father Juan became the 3rd, and now Francis is the 4th. Well, around this time, he quickly starts to try to pass off his titles and stuff to his children. Now, by 33, how convenient is that? Is when they mark his devotional life changes, where he starts to become so just pious and wanting to devote himself to God. Bullshit. Again, say which God? Which God? In 1546, Lenore dies. Now that his wife is dead, Francis is now free to pursue this new cult of people, this new society called the Jesuits. the Jesuits. Excuse me, I'm trying to be careful with our trigger words here. So he takes 4 years. He works with the Jesuits for 4 years to make sure all of his children have his titles and his land, that everything's set up in the Borgia family. And on May 25th, 1551, Francis Borgia is ordained as a Jesuit priest. At this point, they claim he starts to have secret meetings with Ignatius of Loyola. And we've talked about Ignatius of Loyola, that narcissistic, crazy bastard. Like, he was crazy. Like, that dude was literally Delulu and off his rocker. Now, I think, my opinion is that the Borgias and Ignatius of Loyola were probably having meetings all along. I don't think these meetings just all of a sudden started when he decided he wanted to devote himself to God. I think there were meetings going on all along, because we know that Ignatius is from the Pyrenees. And that's where Cesare Borgia's family married into. The dots are connecting, right? This is all one big, it's, what is it that comedian said? It's all one big club and we ain't in it. It's all one big club, right?
One big boys club.
And we ain't in it. They're in it. So anyway, he started to do like healings on people. So he started to display these mystical powers. Now, I will say, sometimes the darkness will do trickery with this. The darkness can heal you as well and trick you. The law of one talks
isn't that interesting? Because that's when we talked, and again, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just find what you're saying interesting, because I'm comparing what Jesse speaks about the system, the light side and the dark side of the system. So the light side of the system, there's a big difference to being of the light, right, and operating on the light side of the system, because we know there's the dark witchcraft and the nasty ones, and then of course there's the light ones, like the ones that do this la angelic healing and this airy fairy stuff. And when they have their witchy battles and they really are wounded badly in the system, they bring the witches over, the healers, and then they heal them, and within minutes the scars are gone. But of course they remember everything, right? They know, just physical scars are gone. And that's how the light side of the system often works. And often you're going to find the light side of the system, for example, would be these charismatic churches, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, all the churches, really. All the churches that lure people in and pretend. And pretend to do the good things. Like oftentimes they'll talk about the tarot card readers. You're telling people their fortune and goodwill. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, whatever, I don't know. So there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It's trickery and manipulation is all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And so this is where I died laughing listening to Isaac Longworth, Friar Isaac Longworth. So he said that Francis Borgia, and I'm paraphrasing the way he said this, that Francis Borgia would go to people's houses who hadn't been to church in a while and try to get them to let them know the church missed them and wanted them to come back. Whoa, this is the Spanish fucking Inquisition. What are you talking about, Longworth? What the hell are you talking about? No.
I mean, seriously, you got it. Who fell for that crap?
A lot of people in the comment section did. What? Nobody.
And hello, look what's happening again. What's happening again now after the Zappity Doodah Day? And now still falling for it. Isn't this crazy?
I'm like, this was the Inquisition. This isn't 2024 where churches are knocking on the door and being kind and being like, we really miss you at church. You should come back. No, this was the Inquisition. They were knocking on the door with pitchforks saying, if you don't get your ass back in church, we're going to burn you at the stake. That's what was happening. That is what was happening. Longworth, Friar Longworth, if you don't lie, don't you lie. Like we're gonna chop your damn head off. If you don't go to church, if you don't submit yourself back to the Catholic Church, we're gonna burn you and your family at the stake. We're gonna burn your kids. That's what he was doing. He was a gang member. He was a gang. That's what the Jesuits are. They're gang members. They're worse than any gang. because they use God as a weapon. So
right.
you riddle me that, Batman. If somebody has not, it wasn't even like you haven't tithed, give us your money. It was like you submit yourself to the new
We noticed you haven't done. That is so funny. We noticed. Is there a problem at home?
Because we've got this nice little fire pit out here. We can burn you if you don't. And that's what they would do. You know, that's part of the reason why. That's part of the reason why the Catholic Church got so wealthy at this point. Because if they killed you for heresy, then they would just they would just confiscate your land and your money, right? So the Catholic Church is sitting on blood money, on stolen money. So Friar Longworth, I don't know what delusional world you're living in of rainbows and lollipops and unicorns, but that was not what was going on in the 1500s. They were literally, it was threatening you. They knocked on your door. It wasn't to bring you a nice little sweet potato casserole and talk about you coming back to church because we're concerned and the congregation misses you and just wants to love on you. No, it was like, we are going to literally burn your ass at the stake. Yeah, the Southern lady and church lady serve you cake, but you have your head. It's crazy. So he also became an exorcist, which we talked about this last week, which I say is a warring. I wrote warring warlock in my notes because that's all exorcisms are, guys. They're not exorcisms. They're demonic. The warlock or maybe that was a Freudian slip, and maybe it was the priest, who's actually a warlock, is warring with other demons for the control of your soul. You have to be the one to exercise your own self.
Yes, exactly.
Help you, but a priest cannot help you with this. A priest ain't nothing but a fucking warlock. Look at what they wear. They're warlocks for the darkness. All right, so he started doing that. I also have that he would kill people. He would specifically take place in the murder of people who would not submit. He would put hits on people. I'm sorry, Friar Longworth, you want to venerate this man who was nothing but a schmurderer. He was a schmurderer. All right. He founded a bunch of colleges and universities. Ain't that something? They always are founding colleges and universities, which is another.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is right before they did the Federal Reserve and they took over the public school education, right? They've been doing the same thing all the time. We'll just brainwash you even more through education, right? All right. Now, in 1565, he was elected as the third superior general Black Pope. So now he's literally the Mac Daddy of the New World Order. And if you guys missed that whole breakdown of the Schmezuits about how they're connected to the New World Order, I would suggest go back and watch that. All right. So he died on the 30th of September, 1572 at 61 years old. Now, his body was sent back to Spain in 1617. A Jesuit house was built in Madrid specifically for him. His body was placed there in 1627. Now, let's talk about now getting into kind of what happened to him after death, because this gets back into like the necromancy that we talked about earlier. So he was beatified on the 23rd of November, 1624, and he was canonized on the 20th of June, 1670. Now, Shanti, I sent you a picture of him holding a skull.
Such a handsome guy. He's such a hottie, babe. He's such a hottie. Hang on, wait.
He did not get the looks of his great uncle Cesare. I'm telling you, Cesare would have got me. I would have been a god.
This is a hottie. I'm voting for this one.
Look at that little douchebag. So he's holding a skull with a crown on it. You guys, with his sainted halo above his head. So his skull is now crowned with an emperor's imperial crown on it. To this day, his skull is still being used. Now, remember necromancy? We talked about necromancy a few weeks back, about how that's all sainthood really is necromancy, which is black magic. It's using relics of dead people in order to harness dead people for them to bid in your favor. So if we have Francis Borgia, who in my opinion was probably one of the most talented warlocks in his time, most powerful warlocks in his time, he is now, if you sell your soul to the devil's going to come collect. So in his death, they're now using his head with a crown on it, in my opinion, to still summon the spirit through necromancy of Francis Borgia. And yeah, that's all sainthood is anyway, is necromancy. That's all sainthood is black magic necromancy. All right. So that's interesting that they have this painting of him holding his own skull with a crown on it. So it's the crown to appease the spirit of Francis Borgia, so he'll come back and do his alchemy and do his, I don't know, his woo-woo magic for the negative people now as a spirit, maybe. Now, this is what's scary, too. There is a Jesuit city in South Brazil called São Borja. I think I sent you the sign to it and the plate where it's located in Brazil. It was named after him in 1682. So if you guys remember, Brazil was marked by his great-grandfather, Pope Alexander VI. He was the Pope that divided South America between the Spanish-speaking people and the Portuguese-speaking people, making Brazil Portuguese and the rest of South America Spanish. So the fact that he was married to a Portuguese noblewoman and he handled, in my opinion, Isabel, the Portuguese empress, the fact that there is now a town in Brazil that's named after him. And I have to wonder, I mean, do you have that picture, Shanti, of just the sign? Because the town, I've tried to look for information on this town of São Borja, but I can't find much on it. It looks like a little podunk town. Like there doesn't seem to me be much there. It's a Jesuit town. So I have to wonder, is this location a portal? Is there some significant longitude or latitude or ley line to this particular town in Brazil? I don't know. But it just kind of seems like a podunk town now. It doesn't seem like there's a lot going on there. So is this a witch town?
Oftentimes it would be. Those towns would be either built on some type of a ley line or an important type portal or spiritual gate, but it's not just one. They would then link a lot of the towns or the churches together. So they would use the ley lines to link the things together as well. So even if that one itself might, for example, not be on a specific ley line or portal or spiritual gate or whatever they do, it could well be part of one that links a whole lot together. So it would be a link of the chain.
Yeah, it's, oh my God, do you see what My Southern Lifestyle and Friends just wrote? Hopefully he didn't come back. Can you imagine him running around in one of those tiny little bathing suits?
A Speedo, no, ooh, no, deal breaker. A definite deal breaker. No, guys, please, never. Just don't, please, no.
Well, you know that there are a lot of the descendants of the Borgias today claim to be in South America. I mean, we know we know Pope Francis. Isn't that interesting? Pope Francis that we have today is from Argentina, correct? The sausage smuggler.
We're not allowed to talk about wieners. This is why Caleb's not on the show today.
They love their wieners. They force us to talk about those wieners because they sure as hell love to put them on furniture and put them in pickle them in jars.
Exactly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be pickling them in a jar. And we can say it was not them, but we have to know that it's still part of their anatomy. So they would ultimately still have gone.
Can you imagine how shitty of luck that would be? Imagine that you get relicked, like your body dies, and they take something from your body, and it's your wiener. Like, can you imagine? I would be pissed if I was a ghost and somebody, if someone took my boob or something, I would haunt the shit out of them. I'd be like, I'm not coming. I'm not going to be your necromancer. I'm just going to haunt the shit out of you. Put my boob back. Like, if you're going to take something of mine, at least make it my head or my finger. Like, don't, like, how, like, Rasputin.
Make it the middle finger while you're about it.
Make it the middle finger. Like, what the hell? Like, why would, I mean, if I were Rasputin, I would be pretty upset about that. I would probably haunt them because I'd be like, take my wiener out of the jar. Take my wiener. My wiener is now on display for the whole
Well,
damn.
clearly he likes it there because it's been in there for centuries and it's probably growing. It's expanding with all that chemicals.
I mean,
he must like it there because it looks as happy.
Because, man, as a straight woman, I'm going to tell you something. Your wiener is not attractive, okay? It's not attractive. It's the one-eyed monster. It serves a purpose, and that is it. It's not something I want to actually look at, though, if it's not serving the purpose it's supposed to serve. Keep it in your pants. There are other things about a man's body that is way more attractive. Their chest, their arms. Your wiener, I don't care to see it unless I need to see it for a particular reason. That's it. Don't put it.
You want to see it? Okay, let's not go there. Let's not go there.
Don't send me pictures because they're ugly. It's a one-eyed monster. It's ugly. It's only a person.
You're not supposed to look at it, Brice. That's the thing.
It's so disgusting. Like, a man's body is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I'm a straight woman. I love a man's body, but that is your least attractive part. That is your least attractive part.
Exactly, Linda. I'm trying to tell her she's not supposed to be looking at it. The lights are supposed to be off, Brice. What are you doing looking at it?
I gotta see if it's gonna fit. If something came out of a man's pants that looked like Rasputin's, I would say, oh, hell no.
Really, Brice?
Honey.
Can you just stop looking at the wiener now? You're not supposed to look at it. Can you do with it what it's supposed to be done with? And stop looking.
I gotta make sure it's gonna actually. I mean, literally, what's that hysterical? And then Shanti, that TikTok girl like measuring her head against what people want to claim their size is, and she like measures her head to show you like, don't be so quick to say you got 10 inches because that's how like it's not gonna fit. Like it's not gonna fit. I don't know why you're bragging about this. It's not gonna fit. So if something came out, if I was with a man and it was our first time being intimate and something that looked like Rasputin's came out of his pants, I would probably leave. I would just leave. I'd be like, I'm sorry, I can't. It's going to break me. It's going to break my body. I'm sorry. So anyway, yeah, get it, ladies, get a YouTube platform. You will get so many dick pics. I have gotten so many that I'm just like, I could probably create I don't know why men think that's why men think that's going to allure you. It's not. So anyway, all right. I've been looking at Francis. I'm sure his was little. I'm sure it was tiny because look at him. He looks like he has a small one. So anyway.
He looks like he has to overcompensate.
Yeah, he's got the Napoleon complex. He's trying to overcompensate for. I mean, he had 8 kids, so it obviously worked. But yeah, it's guys. If you want to charm a woman, don't do that. Don't. That's not what women want. So now there's multiple schools that are named after him all over the world. That's scary. That there are St. Francis Borgia elementary schools. That's terrifying. There are hundreds of churches named after him. So if that didn't convince you, the name church didn't convince you you're going into a demonic temple, then maybe having St. Francis Borgia Church would. And there's randomly, I sent you a picture of the statue. There's a random statue, and I'm sure it's not random. It's random to us because I'm like, what the hell does Prague have to do with the Borgia?
Hang on, what else I have is that? Is that what you're looking for?
All right, so that's where it is in Brazil. But if you don't have the picture, if you guys Google yourself, just Google St. Francis Borgia statue, Prague. There is this random statue of St. Francis Borgia on the big famous bridge in Prague. And what's interesting is underneath the statue, there's the cross, the skull and crossbones. So that's interesting. Wow. That's not a mistake. That's on purpose. So, and it's a pretty magnificent, I mean, Prague, I've never been to Prague. It's one of the places I want to go. I really want to go to Prague. But there's some interesting stuff happening in Prague. And that is now on my list of why. Why is there a St. Francis Borgia statue in Prague? Why? This random, like, why? The Borgias aren't from that area. They're from Spain. So why? That's weird.
Prague is Czechoslovakia, right?
Yeah, it was. Well, Czech Republic now.
Must.
Did you see what Simply Set just? Did you see what Simply Set just said? Its sister city is Prague, Oklahoma, and it has a special Catholic church. That's interesting.
Okay. I was thinking something like that. If you say the sister city, Prague.
Oh, and that Oklahoma. So the sister, there's a. So I think what she's saying is there's a Prague, Oklahoma, which would be the sister city of Prague in the Czech Republic. Okay, she's looking up, and there's an interesting. Yes, Sandy, New Orleans is heavy Catholic. Heavy Catholic. That's the one. So most of the Deep South, I live technically in the Deep South, is Protestant. And we can actually kind of talk about this on, okay, Simply Said, it's the Prague, Oklahoma National Shrine of the Infant Jesus. That is interesting. That is interesting.
Wow.
And Sandy, if you want on Wednesday, because I know we were talking about like kind of doing a follow-up on the Gypsy Rose stuff, we can actually talk more about that if you guys want on Wednesday, because New Orleans Mermaid, that's a really good question. I don't know. So there's a sister city to Rome, Italy here in Georgia called Rome, Georgia. My parents live there now, and they have like a Romulus and Remus statue. I don't know what the significance, that's something I can't really understand what the significance is. It's not like you get any perks. You're just considered a sister city. And I don't know if they have sister cities in Europe with European. Okay, Simply Said, it was established by immigrants from there. That's interesting because Georgia is not heavy Italian at all. We don't have hardly any Italians in Georgia, and Rome, Georgia's in Georgia. So that's very interesting. I think there's a shady history cover-up, though. You know, Shanti and I have talked about this a little bit. Like, I don't know if our history, I'm more akin to say that our geography isn't accurate. That's what I'm more akin to say, is that the geography isn't accurate more than the history. So, if they're connected, well, a lot of them are named after each other. Sandy, she says, kind of makes you wonder if these sister cities are connected somehow. They're named after each other.
Hang on, find these.
Check base.
What was Linda saying here, which I'm not quite sure what that means. Yes, they say twinned with not sister. I don't understand what that means, but twinned with not sister. Twinned. Linda, can you just clarify what you're saying there, please? I'm not quite sure. Brice, can you make out what she's saying there?
Maybe not if I was thinking twin, they're not in an exact. Now, I will say, here's the thing. So Rome, Georgia has 7 hills, just like Rome, Italy does. So there are, maybe that's what she's meaning, there are some significant geographical things about the location. Oh, that's interesting. Zero. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's interesting. There's something to it. And I think we grew up because we have a lot of sister cities here in the United States. And I think we kind of grew up thinking it was more like an homage thing or a veneration thing. But we know that that's what they tell us, and what is not always the same. So, now, I will say, so Rome, Georgia is where Mr. T does a lot of his rallies when he comes to Georgia. There's a private airport there. And Rome, I do not like Rome, Georgia. I'm very outspoken about my disdain for Rome, Georgia. There's a lot of, my opinion, Illuminati stuff going on there. There's a lot of money. There's a college called Berry College that I think is, my opinion, I think they're totally trafficking children. There's a lot of Tartarian buildings there. So there is a lot of, I think, stuff that's still really hidden from us, that we're still kind of, we know there's something to it, but we don't know all the facts yet because the facts have been hidden from us. Yeah. So San Francisco is named after Francis Borgia as well. Saint Francis, San Francisco, right? So St. Ignatius Catholic School is a school here in San Francisco. City is Chicago. I know there is darkness. Yeah. So San Francisco is another town named after St. Francis Borgia, right? Yeah. Yeah. So it's yeah. Oh, so many resets. So there's a lot of, I think, just haziness for us now. But the fact that we're aware of the haziness is, I think, we're making progress, because 30 years ago we would have just taken the history at face value, correct? So now that we're able to go, something isn't right. Might be mermaid. I don't know. It very well could be. Very well could
I was
be.
thinking the same, mermaid, because, and I'm just putting your comment up there, because when we're looking, again, let's look at Valhalla, for example. Valhalla is a well-known underground city, okay? Valhalla is also what the Vikings call, it's Viking heaven, basically, right? And interesting, in Pretoria, there's a whole section, and especially when apartheid years were on, where the military was based, area called Valhalla. Now, for me, that is definitely linked. And they would link these cities, or these underground cities, definitely. And that's why I'm just figuring out this twinning. The twinning to me would be a mirror of sorts.
Yeah.
So they would need to be mirroring each other on something, right? So there would be something one has that the other one is lacking, or who are working in the opposite of the other one. So they would be working in harmony. That to me is saying that it's probably charging a ley line, or charging a portal, or doing something. But I know that they would build these places on these churches, anything,
Yeah.
military places, parliamentary buildings, and then they all link energetically. And then that empowers whatever it is they're working their magic for.
I will say too, so I know like Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston are all on one particular ley line that then connect over to Stonehenge, like lane line. And I'm thinking like Rome, Georgia. So if you draw a line straight from Rome, Georgia, across the Atlantic, you're going to be in Morocco. You're not going to be in Europe. We're we're close to the equator. So it's just very interesting. It's, yeah, and I think, and then I also said I personally, you guys might think I'm crazy, but here we go. I actually think there's more land that we're not aware of here on this planet.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So.
Oh, it's for sure. I think it is so definitely.
There's like continents we don't know about on this planet that. So.
And not just that, the realms as well. I think because what we're discovering more and more, it's not so much about having a flat earth or a round earth, whatever. I think it's kind of somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But it's not about outer space, although I do believe there's outer space, although I do believe we are in a firmament as well. But there's like 9 realms within Earth, right? The Earth, the planet Earth. And that's why we're having all these cryptids and things coming through, because right now the veils are thinning. Right, so all the cryptids are coming through, and we're realizing more and more. And of course, these guys have kept that from us for the longest time. So they freaking us out 200% right now with all these creatures of the night entering the realms. But by the same token, we must never forget. Yes, it's toroidal. The Earth is toroidal. That's what I'm told. So it's like, as much as what the darkness is manifesting itself, remember, so is the light.
Yeah.
But the light manifests itself differently. It's a powerful internal frequency shift.
Mm-hmm.
Your frequency is your key that elevates you.
So we might just be able to see things we didn't see before.
Exactly.
Just said, have you seen the new
third eye's opening.
Yeah, so we're seeing, and Simply said, I said, have you seen the new islands that formed and scientists are studying to see how the Earth living species started? I actually covered a while back. I know it's on my channel somewhere. These islands that kind of appear and disappear and reappear, and there's, if you guys go and look at maps from like the 1600s. and you really look at those maps, you'll know we've been effing lied to about so much. I mean, they
Yeah.
tell us that we only discovered Antarctica in the 1800s. Well, why is Antarctica on maps from the 1500s then?
Yeah, exactly. In the 1400s.
Yeah, like it's crazy.
Please, Africa was around in the 1400s. We've seen pictures of that. And we've seen how the African people were kings and how they created universities, canals, shipping systems, water systems. And there are Caucasian men bowing down to African kings. And that was from the Congo. Now the DRC, the then Congo. That's where I mean, it's a well-known fact that Africa, this continent, was what's the word? Had a lot of the early educators. I don't know what you call them. The people, very bright people, came from here. So it's amazing, and if that was around in the 1400s already, right? We had to have understood that long before that, there was such a big build-up to that. How did the people in the 1400s become so smart? How did they get all these amazing things? We have to believe that there was technology available to them. And what Caleb Jade will always talk about, and this is what he's saying as well, what we think is magic now, right? It's actually not magic. It's high frequency technology.
Yeah.
So these guys, the controllers, have got this magical technology that comes from before the mud floods, right? So it's still stuff from our forefathers. That's what the whole AC movement is they're getting all these living ships and things. So magic that they use, we think, oh my God, it's magic. It's high not high vibrating, but it's very high level technology that they're actually using on us. Yeah. So the more we just grow in our core, our inner being, we just got to grow up and strengthen up. And, when we do that, these guys can't touch us, because that's the vibration. When we get beyond a certain point, our vibration becomes indigestible for them. Like when we move to 4D positive, for example, the light that our energy then, that is us, cannot be eaten, munched on, sucked up by the lower vibrating frequencies. They can only get you up to the third, up to number 3 chakra, because when you go to the 4th chakra, you're in love, you're in heart, you're in trust now. But to get from your solar plexus to trust, complete trust, where you can't touch trust, and it's an element of air. You can't touch the air. So you have to learn how to trust and spread your wings. That's what we do when we move into the heart center, which is where we're going now. You cannot get there unless you've learned how to trust, right? Yeah. Otherwise, these guys are then you go to the lower chakras, right? That's when they get you with fear, money, power, greed, sex, blackmail, blah, 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 when you haven't empowered yourself beyond that yet. So that's the shadow work we have to do, because when we move beyond that, we can then move into the upper chakras, and poof, they can't freaking touch you. Then you can say, kiss my cute little ass.
Because we're not inbred, so we're a lot cuter than you are. But I will say, that's what I think. I think a lot of people, and I love how you talk about fear, because I think a lot of people get really panicky when they start to question that maybe our history or our geography isn't correct. Like, oh my God, everything up. They start to panic, but I don't panic. I am comfortable at this point, not knowing specifically if everything is correct or if maybe there's a different timeline. I'm comfortable. And I think once you become comfortable with that there is some unknown particles, that's when you become in that trust, because you're just like, it's fine. Whatever the truth is, it's going to come out. I'm fine. We're all fine. If our history is wrong, okay, it's wrong. Then it's exciting to learn the real history. What's the real history then?
The whole thing is, Brice, what I love, sorry to interrupt you, what I'm loving, and I know you take a lot of criticism because a lot of people mistakenly think it's you. And all I'm saying is what you're doing, you're a brilliant researcher. You know where to research. You look for the hidden stuff. Nothing that you're saying is is new. You are just bringing to our attention that which has been hidden. And what's been hidden then and surfacing now is so going hand in hand with all the other stuff that's coming up, right?
Yeah.
If we look at all the lies, the politicians, Diddy and Kanye and all of that, idols are starting to fall. So the bullshit and the lies are now going to start being brought to the surface. And this again is where we have to be so discerning
Yeah.
in terms of what do we believe, because we have to know the dark forces are so deceptive. Remember,
Absolutely
they
they are.
have to deceive. That's how they've won, through deception, through unfair means. You know, they're the big bully boys. They will take the rules. On earth, there's certain rules that we can play with. And remember, God says, it's not that you're not allowed to break the rules, but you shouldn't break the rules. And what do? Of course, they break them all to get an unfair advantage. And that's how they gain. So we're up against a lot. We're up against a lot energetically. But once we get alignment, once we get what it is to be aligned with God and carrying the real Christ in your heart, they can't touch you. That is the beauty of this, because spiritually, you are now attuned. Your frequency is the key that unlocks your transformation, which takes you to that higher level, to where you have your wings and you now fly out of the swamp.
Absolutely.
And the swamp things can't be schlucking on you anymore. That's how we train ourselves.
I know.
Jesus said,
that's
know thyself.
Exactly.
And when
I will say,
you know this. Yeah.
And thank you for that, Shanti, because I know I get a lot of pushback, especially when I do the breakdown of like the church and stuff. And I think people oftentimes confuse God for religion. God and religion are not the same thing. They're not the same thing. And a lie cannot stand up to scrutiny. The truth can stand up to scrutiny. So if what you believe if you think it's the truth, then it can handle questions. It can handle questioning it. So for people that get triggered by that, you have to ask yourself, why are you triggered? Because if it's the truth, then it can handle the scrutiny. And just because you see the deception in religion does not mean that you see the deception in God. The two are different. My relationship with God is solid. Actually, my relationship with God has gotten stronger since all this research. It's gotten stronger because things make more sense now. They make more sense where they didn't make sense before, where the Bible teaches us of a God that punishes people and bullies people, where that didn't sit right with me before. But now that I know that that's not the truth of God, that was a concocted book by King James, and it's talking about Lucifer, rather, that makes more sense now. That makes more sense to me, And so I think that's what people have to, that's what people got to realize is God. You don't need a religion for God. You don't need a religion, and that's the cabal trains us to defend them. And since the medical world has fallen, since education, now we're seeing the celebrities fall, but we're still taking the knee to religion. We're still consenting to them through people like Francis Borgia, through going to church, and that's not to turn away from God. That's to turn away from their control. And I think that's, Jojo, my biggest learning has come from being triggered. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It's your golden lottery ticket. Ooh, that's interesting. I reacted that way. Let me investigate. Let me investigate why I reacted that way, And so one thing that, will drive me crazy, I will say, I was thinking about this earlier today, is when I was preparing for
thank you for Caleb. Thank you.
Yeah. I love that. The religious industrial complex. I love that. And it's interesting. I was thinking about this today. All these Christians in the world, not everyone, but a majority of Christians will go out there and they'll whine and cry about how persecuted they are when they're not. Not in my country. They're actually the ones doing the persecuting. Look at the Spanish Inquisition. right? They're the ones doing the biggest religion in the world is not going to be if you're the biggest religion in the world, you're not the one that's persecuted. But they train people to have that victim mentality, right? Have that victim mentality. They're going to persecute me because I'm a Christian. No. Go back and look at history. Who's been the persecutor? Who? It's been the Christians who burnt people at the stake. But once you can see that and you stop identifying with that, because that's not you. You are a child of God, right? You can start to separate yourself from the story. And I always quote Shanti. I was like, my friend Shanti always says the drama, it's just the drama of it all. The story is just the drama. And trust me, we love the drama. We're petty. We're petty bitches. We love the drama, but it's just the drama. It's not, it's not.
There comes a time when we got to cut that crap out.
I know. We're taking a loophole where we're gossiping about dead people. So that's the loophole that we're taking.
We're like mischievously sort of tiptoeing down another path. Can we do this?
We're gonna talk about this dead douchebag over here. It's for us because they do. That's the gift the Cabal has given us, is that they do things in patterns. And once you can recognize the patterns from the past, you can recognize the patterns now. And so, it's as I was starting to break down the Spanish Inquisition, which we'll get to. I've got a lot of research to get into that, though. I started thinking, like, it's sad that I know a lot of Christians today that would be totally stoked to see people burned at the stake. They're so bloodlust. They're so wanting that. And that speaks of, if that's how you are, then that speaks of your heart. And that speaks of your, like, what are you actually doing if that's what you want? If you want to see people burned at the stake, if you want to see people hurting like that, then what God are you worshiping? That's when you have to question what you've aligned yourself with. So yeah, it's I think I know with the Diddy stuff, we've heard whistleblowers say that the churches are going to be called out now because a lot of churches were funneling money into Diddy's freak offs and children. So I think that's going to be a mass shaking up for people.
Well, Kris Kardashian bought a church. She's been having a church for quite a while.
Exactly.
Charging people, I don't know how much money to be part of the church. So all these Satanists that are buying churches, well, we can see that that's their haven.
Yeah.
And so just don't go to church. Gather with your friends in the park. Have a picnic on the beach or in the mountains. That is a gathering with two or more.
Yeah.
Is just absolutely awesome.
I love what Oso just said. So no wood chippers. That should have the wood chipper there. We can't throw them into wood chippers. So yeah, and not telling people what to do, like allowing, and I always say we're all prophets. Like, we're all prophets. If you are in a religion where there's certain people that are venerated as prophets over others, you're in a satanic religion, because that is elitism. And so we're all
know them by their fruit.
Absolutely. I'm looking at you, Joel Osteen. I'm looking at you, Francis Borgia. And look at what happened with Joel Osteen's church in all seriousness a few years ago when Texas had that freak snap and it froze in Texas, and Joel Osteen closed his church and wouldn't let people come in for warmth. Is that what the Christ does? No, that should have told you right then and there that Joel Osteen is not interested in the same God that you're interested in. Absolutely, Sandy. I think Diddy is going to be singing like we know that they're cowards. They're all cowards. So let's.
Look, I honestly think there's so much in the last 2 to 3 years, especially. There's been so much going down with these celebrities. Like first, remember it started with Ellen. And I mean,
Harvey Weinstein,
with her chimpanzee. And if you guys have not seen, I did a show on her. Gosh, maybe a year ago now. It's called Dropping with Ara. Ellen DeGeneres and a chimpanzee sanctuary in Rwanda in Africa, and then you got to see how she's trafficking our chimps, and that's what they do. They buy these places and they use these animals in the system. Guys, if you have not heard Jesse's stories about what they're doing to our primates, Madam Oprah Winfrey is she's the Queen Pimper, Pimper, and is the head of a primate, prostitution, prostitution ring. Yeah.
No. Oh my God. That is so gross.
It's dark, people. It's dark. It's very, very dark.
Listen, Cabal.
I have to tell you,
dog, you're going to see a side of me come out that you don't want to see come out.
No, but babe, it's not just that.
I know.
They use all the animals, and you must see what they do with the primates, especially. I sat in some of Jesse's shows in the beginning. I was in tears. I could not deal with the stuff she was saying. And also the lions, how the big cats, how they play gladiator games, man. They're still using these things and animals, and they getting these guys in the system to have gladiator games.
I'm telling you, they should be. People who hurt animals should be charged just like hurting people. Like that is not as a living being. That's off. That is not yours to take. Oh shoot! Chantelle, I got another show I gotta hop on. So I just realized.
Yeah. Wow, look at the time. So we have a interesting chat. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, our nerdy professor has to run off.
I gotta go gossip some more, you guys. I got another show. So
the next history lesson.
So, Wednesday, should we talk about Gypsy Rose again on Wednesday? And
I think we talk about Gypsy Rose on Wednesday. Yeah, I think we'll do that because there's a whole little cult that's following that now. So everybody, thank you so much. Bye, Brice. You can go so long if you're in a
guys, love you.
Okay. All right, everybody. God bless you all. Thank you. I see today is a long show, but obviously we talk about all these interesting things, which I think are so timely at this point in time. Anyway, y'all, thank you so much. I shall see you tomorrow. We have Jessica, the Cryptid Huntress again. So I'll see you with her. And then Jesse's back on Wednesday. And yeah, watch the space. We might just have Caleb Jade back soon again. So thank you so much. Take care, everybody. God bless you all.